I told you we might have to do a fourth one of these. Alright there guys, and welcome back to the Mignogna saga. If you have missed any of the previous 3 videos I've done on this situation over the past 3 years, they will all be linked in the description, along with another video from YouTuber TrentMichaels, who covers the Mignogna situation very much on his channel, and he was the first person I saw talk about this new information that we've just gotten, or lack of new information, as you'll find out. So his video on this topic will be in the description as well, if you want to see a visual representation of what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So in the previous video, we talked about how Monica, Rial and Marchi were launching a brand new podcast called In Touch. I forgot to mention the name of it in the previous video, but yeah, the podcast is called In Touch. Which is really ironic because of how wrong that is. Those two women could not be further out of touch, if we're being honest. They are not in touch whatsoever. So the first episode of the podcast dropped about 2 weeks after my previous video on this topic. So at the start, more to the start of this month. And the basic summary of the podcast from Monica and Jamie themselves was: listen to us talk about our sexual harassment and sexual assault. Listen to us talk about the harassment we receive for talking about our harassment publicly. Basically, heavily playing the victims here. And if you want the TLDR, which means too long didn't read version, that's the summary. The TLDR summary is: we won, they lost, and they can't get over it. It's now time for us to tell our side of the story. As I said in the last video, they've already told their side of the story, and it's been proven false many, many times in the past 3 years. But the key thing to note there is when that it reads, we won, they lost. Hang on a minute, who's they? Vic is just one person. So who do Monica and Jamie mean by they in this context? Well, if you haven't been able to guess, people like you and me, the anime fans, the people who have stood up for Vic this entire time, the people that have always fought for justice and for the right decision in this lawsuit to be made. That is who Monica and Jamie are referring to by they in this context. The anime fans, the people that have supported Vic, the people that have stood up to their lies. And also remember those words: we won, they lost, and they can't get over it. Remember those words for what we're going to be talking about later on. So, have I listened to the podcast? Of course not. You think I'm going to spend an hour and a half of my time listening to 2 people I very highly despise, who are known manipulators and liars, and you expect me to spend an hour and a half listening to that? Hell no. Which is why I'm going to be saying the word apparently a lot in this video, because I can not confirm 100% if any of this is true, as I didn't listen to the podcast, and I'm not gonna. Again, you let other people do the hard work for you by going through the pain of listening to it themselves, talking about it, and then you piece together what you can from that, which is what I'm doing. So, apparently the podcast opens up with Monica and Jamie saying, we are not able to offer any new information at this time, as it is an ongoing court case. So let's get this straight. It's been 3 years since this situation all kicked off. January 2019 is when it all started. It's been over 3 years since all this kicked off. You told your side of the story back then, and got exposed for lying, pretty much lying about the whole thing. You've stuck to the lie constantly, even after it got proven false many times. Even in the deposition in the summer of 2019 that Monica, Jamie and Ron Toy had, they were nowhere near as prepared or ready to answer these questions as what Vic was. Not only that, but what did I say at the start of this video? What did I just explain about the TLDR? We won, they lost, and they can't get over it. Hang on a minute, but if you can't offer any new information because it's an ongoing court case, then that means you didn't win. I'm not a lawyer, but if I use basic logic, I can understand that if a court case is ongoing, nobody has won or lost. That's how it works, right? No one has won or lost if the court case is ongoing and has not finished. As we've been in the appeal process for over a year, due to the pandemic disrupting all of that. So we have no idea when the appeals are finally going to get looked at again, whether they're going to be accepted or rejected. We've got no idea. So why are Monica and Jamie in the summary of the podcast saying that they won, but then in the actual podcast itself, apparently, they say that they don't have any new information to offer at this time because it's an ongoing court case. But what is the real reason they don't have any new information to offer? Is it because they feel that they can't say it because it needs to be told to the court? Maybe, but the much more likely answer to this question is they've got no new information. That's why they can't offer any new information, because they don't have it, because there isn't any, because they lied about everything the first time. And just before I started recording this video, like 2 minutes, no joke, 2 minutes before I started recording this video, I went on Twitter and saw a YouTuber that is very well known in the I Stand With Vic movement, the Umbrella Guy, who even talks with Vic quite regularly. He posted a tweet that I've just seen this morning. Well, it's going to be a couple of weeks later by the time the video goes up, but at the time of recording, it's just been posted, or I've just seen it. And apparently, Monica Rial on Twitter, now the reason why I would never be able to find this myself is because Monica Rial actually blocked me on Twitter in 2019, which is still my greatest achievement on the platform of Twitter. Getting blocked by Monica Rial, that's still my best achievement on there. But apparently Monica Rial is hiding behind charities of the things, basically charities that are for the things that she claims to be a victim of. So stuff like sexual assault and things like that. Sexual harassment. The things she claims to be a victim of are what these charities do. They help people who are actually victims of these things, not the people who lie about it like Monica is. But apparently she's hiding behind this charity as a defense mechanism from all the blowback and backlash she and Jamie are getting from this podcast episode, because it seems they haven't given any new information on this situation, because they don't have it, and it was all factually wrong in the first place. And the most important thing about this is the conspiring thing. Vic Mignogna sued the two of them, along with Funimation, for defamation and for conspiring against him. And apparently in this podcast, it's Monica and Jamie were actually talking about possibly doing what they actually did to Vic even earlier than they did it. Talking to one of your work colleagues about a planned attack on one of your other colleagues at work to get them fired. That seems like a little bit too much like conspiring, doesn't it? Talking with one of your friends behind this work colleague's back on how the two of you are collectively going to get him fired. That's the very kind of thing Vic filed the lawsuit against them for in the first place. And also, if Monica and Jamie really did win, like they claim to do in the summary, but then instantly say at the start of the podcast that apparently it's still ongoing, but then you didn't win. But if you won, why are you making a podcast? Why are you profiting off of this situation? Have you not had enough of it? Well, it's quite easy to figure out actually. They're doing this for attention and relevance because even though Vic got fired from Funimation 3 years ago, he still has more relevance and support than than Monica and Jamie do. He has more support than they do when he's the victim. That's the amazing thing. This whole situation is turned on its head. The story, the main narrative, is that Monica and Jamie are the victims of horrible treatment from Vic, when in reality, this situation, Vic is the victim of defamation and conspiring from the two of them. The accusers and the people that are claiming to be the victims are the ones who have a victim. They're not victims of him. He's a victim of them. That's the thing. And the fact that they've spent 3 years managing to manipulate and brainwash people into believing that what they're saying is true when it isn't. And I got a comment on the last video that I made on this situation from someone that said that Monica and Jamie don't bring the situation up that often anymore. It's always Vic and his fans bringing it up. And you know what? That is true. Vic has definitely brought this situation up more than they have. But he's the victim of this situation. Of course he's going to bring it up more. He's the person that's reputation was ruined because of this situation. So of course he's going to be speaking about it more. And it's got to the point where he's been blacklisted from many anime conventions now, since 2019. Fired from Rooster Teeth, fired from Funimation, so there's 2 companies he'll never work for again. Not that he probably ever wants to work for them again either. So what am I really hoping for the outcome of the whole lawsuit? Well, the outcome I hope is that Vic wins, obviously, and Monica, Jamie, Ron, and Funimation all get sued the crap out of. Then, what needs to happen is Monica and Jamie need to be blacklisted from certain anime conventions as well, just like Vic did. They need to be fired from every company they work at that isn't Funimation, because they were in cahoots with Funimation to get Vic fired. So of course Funimation won't fire them because they were all in cahoots together. But any other companies that they work for that isn't Funimation should fire them on the spot with immediate effect. And why do I say this? Well, there's no greater satisfaction than watching people go through something horrible that they made you go through. There's no greater satisfaction then at least for Vic, that's what I feel like. I don't think Vic would even want this to happen to them. I don't think he'd want them to be blacklisted from anime conventions and go through what he went through. I just think all he hopes is that they get sued and he rightfully gets the compensation for the defamation and conspiring against him that happened. But yeah, I would love to see those two things. The two of them get blacklisted from anime conventions, just like Vic, which is what they forced to happen to Vic, and that they get fired from every company that they work for that isn't Funimation. Make the two of them suffer the way they made Vic suffer. Make them go through everything that they forced him to go through over the past 3 years. Because Vic is still being targeted by conventions, blacklisting him, and still getting attacked by people now, 3 years later. I think I told you in the last video that the new Star Trek series, the actors for the new Star Trek series have attacked and condemned Vic, not appreciating what he's done for the Star Trek franchise. But back to the main case at hand. The conspiring. Funnily enough, calling out Monica and Jamie in a reply to one of their tweets, saying that these two people conspired against an innocent man, is funnily enough what got me blocked by Monica Rial on Twitter at the time. I even tweeted about it last year, saying it's my best achievement on Twitter. Getting blocked by Monica Rial. Which is weird because Jamie Marchi was the person I replied under. It was one of her tweets I replied to, but Monica ended up blocking me and not Jamie. So yeah, the only way I can see Monica's tweets are from when other people quote tweet them, or screenshot or quote tweet them, because I can't actually view them for myself anymore, as I'm blocked. But that's the main information we've got since the podcast has dropped. No new information, because they don't have any. Claiming that they won, and then backtracking on that immediately. And even talked about how they were planning on coming forward about these allegations that we all know are false earlier than they actually did. Which, if you think about it, isn't that actually evidence that helps Vic and not those two? Because Vic filed the lawsuit against them under defamation and conspiring against him. And Monica and Jamie have kind of literally just admitted, well, apparently, they've admitted to doing the very thing Vic has sued them for. So that might actually end up working in Vic's favour. Which at the end of the last video, I said there are 3 possible outcomes that this podcast could have. Number 1, it changes absolutely nothing. Number 2, it actually helps Monica and Jamie's case. Or number 3, it heavily backfires on all 3 on the 2 of them. Which would then mean it would backfire on Funimation and Ron Toy as well. And actually, they end up saying something that actually helps Vic, which it seems like they might have actually done that by admitting they were planning on doing this earlier than they did, which is literally how conspiring against somebody works. But yeah, that's all the new information on the Vic Mignogna situation we currently have. I'm not going to cover this situation again on the channel until it's over. The next time I talk about this situation could be quite a few months from now. Who knows when this saga will end. Whether the lawsuit appeal gets rejected or accepted. And if it gets accepted, that means it'll take even longer, and then we'll have to wait for the outcome of that before I talk about this situation again. But yeah, that is the end of part 4 of my series, I guess now, on the Vic Mignogna situation. Part 5 will be the finale where we talk about the end of the saga. And I will talk, no matter who wins and loses, I will talk about it. I won't just talk about it if Vic wins. If Monica and Jamie still end up winning again overall, I will still talk about that. But that's the end of the video. If you guys have enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new. I don't need to ask if you support Vic or not in the comments, because as I saw in my last video, quite a lot of you indeed do support Vic, like me. But until next time, catch you later.